Hello, friends and enemies, and welcome to the first episode of Ice is Slippery, an unserious podcast about hockey brought to you by 1.5 hockey fans. My name is Kate, and I'm the one who's a whole entire hockey fan.
And my name is Fred. I am half a hockey fan.
We are a married couple who's been together for 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
Yep. I have been the hockey fan. It's really only in the last 2 to 3 years, though, that I've become really a hockey fan. And poor Fred was really just along for the ride at this point, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm watching a lot of hockey these days, but if it was not on, I would not be watching it.
Yes. So really, this podcast, believe it or not, was actually his idea. And I'm starting to think it was just an elaborate hoax to get me to only talk about hockey once a week with him, which is actually diabolical. So congratulations.
It's worked out well. You've been making notes rather than telling me things.
It's true. I've been saving it up. But now I have so many things to say that I think we should just get right into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So for our first segment, I've been calling it Hockey Happenings, and that's where we check in on what's going on around the NHL. So right now we're in this kind of weird liminal state where it's hockey season, but also preseason. Hockey season did officially kick off on Friday with the Global Series games. We had the New Jersey Devils and the Buffalo Sabres in Czechia. They played Friday and Saturday. But then we immediately went back to preseason games stateside. So it's a little confusing.
It is. So the season's officially underway.
Yes.
But not really.
But correct.
Okay,
yes.
gotcha.
So those games we watched, well, I watched on Friday. You watched the one with me on Saturday morning, kind of. And those are the first official games of the hockey season. But I don't think we're getting any official games until maybe like Wednesday, Thursday this week.
Okay.
I know the first Stars game was on Thursday, and that's really the official start of hockey season for me personally. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm paying attention to.
But those games in Czechia counted as 2 wins for
the Devils. Yes, they do. Those do count. Just like when the Stars play the Panthers in Finland in November, those will also count. Those are part of the season.
Yep.
So, but really, I think the big news on Friday was the 6 episodes of the Amazon series dropped on Friday. It's called Face Off Inside the NHL. I know Face Off is a hockey term, but because I am a child of the 90s, all I could think about was that, what was it? John Travolta, Christian Slater movie? Nicolas Cage.
Nicolas
Cage, where they traded faces.
Yes.
And I was like, is this going to be a series about somebody taking Connor McDavid's face? I think that would have been really fascinating.
Yeah.
But alas, it was really just more of a straightforward hockey documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Although I will say I thought it was surprisingly well done.
Yes. So we marathoned it.
We did. Yes. Because we have a 12-year-old, almost to 13-year-old child. So we have obligations. We have things like jobs and school dances, and I had a date to watch Legally Blonde with my kid on Friday, so we really had to marathon the whole thing yesterday. So kudos to you for sitting still for 4.5 hours.
I watched the whole thing.
Yes, no, I was very impressed with you. I've never seen you do that before. So, do we have any big takeaways from the series? What did you think?
Well, I liked it. I mean, it was a reminder of last season. I don't feel like I learned anything new game-wise, but behind-the-scenes-wise, certainly.
Yeah, for sure. I've started paying more attention to teams beyond Dallas and the Flyers lately, but it still gave me insight into players that I didn't really pay much attention to before. I really didn't know about William Nylander before, and I feel like I walked away with kind of a bigger appreciation of him, certainly.
Yeah, he was not on my map. Like, I know he's a guy and he's important, but that's as far as my knowledge of him went.
Yeah, no, I knew, I had heard that he and David Pastrnak went sort of way back, but there's a difference between knowing that intellectually and then seeing all this footage of them as little tiny baby teenagers, playing together in Sweden years ago, and they just looked so little.
Yeah.
I mean, not much older than our kid, actually. So it was very strange. But very sweet to see them sort of still having a relationship and a friendship after all these years, especially with sort of how much the rivalry between the Maple Leafs and Boston has been touted the last couple of seasons.
Right.
Yeah. I will say I feel like I know too much about William Nylander's chest hair now.
It was definitely on display. I do believe that was playoff chest hair, though.
Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I guess that was pretty important to the storyline.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be unruly. He's in the middle of playoffs.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess in that case, it was an artistic choice, so I will be okay with that. Episode 2, we moved on. Speaking of,
are we moving on?
You had more thoughts. Oh, yeah. No, by all means, go for it.
No. So both of them, right? I know both of them a little bit. But I walked away with a bigger appreciation of Nylander as a person. I feel like he seems kind of regular to a certain degree, as much as you can be in that position. And he seemed like a nice guy, and he seems like he's got a lot going on. And I had no issues with him. I was expecting to think he was kind of an arrogant, rich hockey player, like I'm the guy kind of thing. But I didn't pick that vibe up from him.
Yeah, no, he seems kind of refreshingly normal.
Yeah.
And I mean, David Pastrnak, I loved how he was as a dad. Like, I thought it was very sweet.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely fantastic. And I mean, we got some humorous moments from him last year. So I was kind of already liked him. I was like, that guy seems pretty cool. And he is cool. Yeah. And he also seems pretty down to earth. And their friendship, too, you could just tell was a real thing. Like even in the shake line there when they were...
the handshake line after the Leafs got eliminated.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I thought it was very telling, too, where they kind of were like, have you gotten to talk to Nylander after the elimination? And he was like, yeah, no, we don't really.
Yeah.
Pasta was like, we don't really do that. Like, it's going to be kind of raw for him for a couple days. Like, we're just going to let him be. Yep. And it was like, they've been there for each other through some like really hard times. So they know like when it's the right time to be there and when it is the right time to kind of stay away and let the other person lick their wounds.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing that got me with Nylander too was taking the subway to the game.
Yes.
Like that's just pretty cool.
Yeah.
Not something I would have expected. And then the little pickup game he did with the kids did not feel forced or staged. It seemed like, oh, hey, can I just go do this now? Is that going to be okay for filming? And then he did. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but it came across that way and it seemed really genuine.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. So, yeah, no, I think we were both on the same page. And I think really from that first episode, we were like, okay, maybe we can actually marathon this now.
Yep.
So that was great.
Yeah. And I think they captured what you've told me of Leafs Nation and
the intensity of the Toronto market.
Yep. And how they don't win. And they still have that intensity.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that they don't win. They do plenty during the regular season,
sure.
But the like frustrations of the playoffs, certainly. And the highs and lows, let's say,
right.
of the Leafs Nations. It's like the running joke of the parade's on, the parade's off, the parade's on, the parade's off.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Yep.
So you definitely got to see that. And then, we move on to episode 2, where we have kind of focusing more on, instead of like the relationships, we're focusing on the injuries. And we see Philip Forsberg and Jack Eichel. And then you also kind of get to see this juxtaposition of this sort of very straightforward family guy, and then like Jack Eichel and his like chef, and like his like going out to dinner and like ordering for the whole table, and like his very Vegas-y life. And it's again a very interesting juxtaposition.
Two guys I don't know anything about.
Well, you do know about Forsberg's fantastic mustache. You
right.
have admired that for quite some time.
Fair enough. I am aware of Forsberg. I'm aware of both of them as players. Jack Eichel, I know he's good. Forsberg, I hear he's good, and he's got a badass mustache. But
yes.
But yeah, no real context for them. And the injuries with Forsberg were really fascinating because I feel like that's something that's talked about a lot during playoffs, or at least you tell me that people are actually injured and not saying anything.
Yes.
And to see the other side of it was fascinating because, my God, I think that was bad.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
that was
No,
not good looking.
things did not look good. I actually was really impressed by how much I have in common with hockey players during that episode. I mean, I am not remotely athletic. I, tend to injure myself in really stupid ways. But I get all of those same kinds of treatments. I have cervical disc herniation, and I get, acupuncture and like e-stim and all of that kind of stuff. And you think it's just as barbaric when I do it. But unfortunately, I don't have like hockey player physique. So sorry about your luck.
No worries. No, but yeah, following the injuries, and I know you've told me about Jack Eichel's previous injury where he was like, no, I'm getting this surgery, and the team was against it. But to see the, like, in the media and to see his kind of expression of it, and like, you can tell that was a time for him.
Yeah.
And I don't think I came away from that episode liking him, but like, I didn't not like him as a result of it. I certainly did like Forsberg a lot more. And particularly his wife.
She was like kind of badass.
His wife is a full-grown businesswoman.
Yes,
And
which is like your highest form of compliment to anybody.
Yeah. No, she is there to support him and do what she needs to do to make sure he is playing hockey.
Yeah.
And it's pretty impressive. And I think this is where we started to get that through line from wives on the injuries, as well as, they're having children and have children, and the injuries becoming a different story where the fighting's not fun, and the concussions are like scary to, the future of families. So
yeah, no, it's a whole different perspective. I really appreciated this episode because it was probably the most Dallas-centric episode of the season.
Yes.
First we saw how crucial Dallas was to the Predator season, because after the Preds had that pivotal 9-2 loss against the Stars, their field trip to the U2 concert was canceled.
Grown men can't go to the show.
Can't go on their field trip, as I think it was Jackie Redmond who said. But it ended up really having a huge turnaround for them, and they reversed their losing skid and went on kind of a crazy run and made it to the playoffs. So good for them.
Yeah.
And then we also got to see Dallas figure very heavily into Vegas, because Dallas faced Vegas in the first round of the playoffs, which, famously Vegas took out Dallas in the Western Conference Finals last year before going on to win the Stanley Cup. Or not last year, but the year before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually had like a brief moment where I was like, oh, that's really nice, because Jack Eichel said, I have to give Dallas a lot of credit. And then he immediately said, because I know I'm not the only one who assumed that we would beat Dallas. Like, everybody in the room assumed we'd beat Dallas, and they came back. And then I was like, oh yeah, I hate Vegas for a reason. That's right. What a bunch of douchebags.
Right. Yeah, they definitely laid into the fact that Vegas doesn't care what you think, even though you didn't get that vibe from the team or whatever. But like the talking heads were very clear. Like, this is a team that's doing what they're going to do, and they don't care.
Vegas is the fuck your feelings team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it didn't work for them last year, because my stance on them. They don't feel like a team to me. They feel like a business, and I know it's a business, but you can still be a team.
I mean, there's a reason you're not like a huge sports fan. You're very much like, I just hope everybody has fun and plays a good game.
Yeah, I just want to see a good game.
You just want to see a good game.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about you. And that's what you don't understand about me, because like, you've seen how cutthroat like board games get in my family, and you find it very confusing and off-putting.
Yeah, no. And it's going to go one way or another. Like, one team's going to win and one's going to lose. Like, that's going to happen every time. So it's,
That's funny, because I had that like revelation, and I wrote that down in my notes last night. But you're like, yeah, no, that's really basic information. I'm like, oh, okay. I was really proud of that revelation I had. I thought it was really emotional. And you're like, yeah, no, that's pretty elementary.
Yeah. And it was interesting for me, because prior to this season, you were telling me about all the trades and everything going on. And I was thinking that Nashville might be my team for the year, because I really thought their pickups were really good. I think they were strong last year. I think they're going to be stronger this year. And
they have Wedgwood now.
They have Wedgwood. I have a Wedgwood t-shirt.
You do.
He's number 41. That's my favorite number. But after seeing them, I do like Forsberg. I do like a lot of people on that team. But the vibes in that locker room are weird.
They're very weird. That like weird towel dance they do after a win.
Yeah. I mean, it was weird before that, and that was just icing on the cake right there.
For sure.
That, nothing against them. They've got their own vibe, but
I'm sure it works for them. No
it
judgment.
Nope.
Like, your kink is not my kink.
Exactly. No, the just very, very strange. And when I watch Tortorella giving press conferences and he's talking about the room, I really understand that now, having seen the behind the scenes of all these teams. All the rooms were very different.
They certainly were. And Nashville's was the weirdest by
Nashville
far.
is, if I was going to rank which room I wanted to be in, that one would be last.
Yes. It would just maybe be a little uncomfortable for reasons you can't quite articulate.
Yeah. No, I think I have a lot more of a bombastic energy that would not fit in there or something. Like, I would want more energy and more excitement out of that room. And I just didn't feel it. Even when the coach was talking.
Yeah, no,
very weird.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Strange energy. It's real. Let's go on a field trip to U2 energy. Wait, never mind energy.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. Yep.
I will say too, just back on the subject of Dallas, I did get to go to one of the games in this documentary. It was very eluded over, but I got to go to my first Dallas home game this year. I flew out for my birthday to Dallas and got to see one of the early Vegas Dallas games. It was, I want to say, game 2 or game 3. I made sure to attend one that was not a crucial do or die game because I didn't want to be disappointed. Mm-hmm. We did lose the game I went to, so that was a very smart decision on my end. But I did really get delighted that we were reminded of one of my favorite playoff moments this season of Radek Faksa, who is sadly no longer a star, but scoring a goal to win the series against Vegas and making the best face of all time of just sheer, like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, just like happy panic. Like, it's just a moment that sticks out with me. I'm going to try and find a screen grab of that and put it on our social media because it's just one of my favorite images of the whole playoffs from the past year.
Yeah, that camera was like right in his face and he was headed right towards the camera. I remember when that happened. That was a nice moment.
It really has stuck with me. So after that, we moved on to episode 3, which goes into, I feel like, a very strange sort of dichotomy. Before we've been talking about like the similarities, a friendship, injuries. And then we're going into, on the one hand, you have Jeremy Swayman, the very sort of stoic goalie, with his like intense eye movements. And then you have Matty Tkachuk living his best life in Florida, just chilling out.
Yep.
And it feels kind of jarring, but in a way it's really good because it sets up both teams really. Like, you're seeing sort of where both of them are coming from the season before, where the Panthers took out the Bruins in the first round pretty unexpectedly, right before the Panthers went on to their really improbable run and went to the finals. But really, I feel like all of the Panthers stuff in that one was really just foreshadowing for later in the series. The big takeaway for me in this episode was Swayman, because so much of it was about the contract stuff.
Yes.
Which,
as you know, I am adamantly interested in.
So, like, every morning, this guy, what's the latest Swayman update? It has been very hard for me to hold this from you, but there is a Swayman update.
Oh my God,
morning.
what?
There is a Swayman update this morning, but I'm going to make you wait a little bit longer.
Okay, fair enough, yeah.
Yes. So this episode, I actually thought was maybe the most interesting because, with everything else, all the other plot lines of the show, we know how they end. Like, the playoffs are over. We know who won. And they did a pretty good job of keeping it interesting despite knowing the outcomes. But with this, like, there was a real sense of anticipation during this episode while we were watching because we didn't know what was going on with Swayman's contract.
Right.
There was a lot of talk about he's a restricted free agent. There are still bad feelings from the arbitration. He has faith that it's going to resolve. But we all know that in real time, it's a lengthy, sort of protracted battle. The Bruins are saying one thing, Swayman's manager is saying another thing. Swayman hasn't been at training camp. Korpisalo's starting. All of this kind of stuff. So it felt very fraught.
Yep.
Yesterday when we were watching it. Like, I had actual dramatic tension. So I am actually really glad that they waited until today to iron out the official details. But as of this morning, Swayman has signed a contract
with
Boston.
Okay.
I know it's not the chaotic outcome everybody wanted.
Yeah, it's okay.
I mean, he's an RFA, so he would have had to sign with Boston.
Yeah.
The only other option would have been, I think, an offer sheet from another team, and that would have just been too juicy for us, I guess.
Yeah.
But he got 8 years at 8.25.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
I think he deserves it. You know my feelings on him. I think he's amazing. I like everything about him.
Even his guitar?
Well, yes. So there was a song in the movie, and it was the guy at the party with the acoustic guitar, and it turns out that's Jeremy Swayman.
He is. He's the guitar guy at the party.
Yeah, he's guitar guy at the party. So he picks up the guitar. I'm a guitar player myself. I'm like, oh, he's going to play a little guitar, whatever. It's probably not going to be great. It sounds like he's just starting. But then he starts singing, and I just died of cringe. But I'll tell you what, the song wasn't bad. I thought it kind of worked. It gave me kind of Old Crow Medicine Show, Lumineers, Mumford vibes. You know, I could hear that behind it. So it worked out okay. But I was about ready to die when he started singing.
Was it more or less cringe than Forsberg with the needles 9 centimeters into the muscles?
Oh yeah, no, I'd rather Swayman sing me lullabies than watch Forsberg get needles jammed in him.
See, the needles are way less painful for me,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's just like a regular Tuesday for me.
Yeah.
So.
But yeah, no, I did enjoy getting to know him, because you've told me about him throughout the year and what a character he is. And he just seemed like somebody I could always vibe with. And it turns out, yes, I can. And I can understand if people don't, and that's fine, but I do.
Well, he is from Alaska, which, you know, my dad lives in Alaska now and has recently just moved there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a weird place.
It is a weird place. Yeah.
Or just.
All right. So, yeah. So this one's Swayman and Tkachuk. What part of Tkachuk was this? This was just the introduction, getting to know his history, getting to know his family.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I feel like if you like Tkachuk, you're going to like that part. If you don't, you might end up liking him a little more, maybe.
I think that's valid. I feel like I've been really Stockholm syndromed into enjoying Matthew Tkachuk this year. I kind of, knew of him at the beginning of the season and just kind of became reluctantly charmed by him. And then really by the end of the season, I don't know, I was swept away in Tkachuk fever.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help it. This first episode with him, you got a lot of sort of glimpses of the family. You got the backstory on his dad and his NHL career. You got some of his relationship with his brother and how close the family is, always hanging out at his house. You got to understand that Paul Bissonnette does not understand how human reproduction works because he thinks Keith Tkachuk gave birth to Matthew and Brady Tkachuk. But other than that, really, it was just kind of talking about the past a little bit. My big takeaway was that, until this episode, you were pointing out everybody's expensive cars,
True.
And this one, it was all about Matthew Tkachuk's golf cart.
Yeah. Which I think was an expensive golf cart.
I'm sure it was the fanciest golf cart. But I mean, I love it for him. He just seems like he's living his best life. Like, we live in Colorado now, but we lived in Florida. I spent most of my life in Florida, and I made you spend 15 very regrettable years there.
Mm-hmm.
And he is the encapsulation of Florida.
I would agree.
He's Florida personified. He is Florida man. He is.
No, that's when I think of Florida, or no, not when I think of, when people think of Florida, I think that's what they should think of. That's the goal right there. That's what everyone's working towards. Now, is life really like that in Florida for most people? No. But that laid back, driving your golf cart, wearing your flip flops, sand everywhere, relaxed, chilling vibe is the prototype, I guess, of Florida, of living in Florida.
For sure. It's when our kid was in elementary school and I would walk to pick her up. And all of the fancy parents would drive their very expensive golf carts so that they could skip the car line and just drive right up onto the grass at school, and it would cause all of these issues. It's just very Florida mentality. It's like, I have golf cart money and I can do what I want.
Yep. No, he seems to fit that vibe real well. So
he definitely does.
Happy
and
for
you can
him.
tell he's just really, really loving his life there. So good for him. And then we went on to the next episode, which was the captain episode. So we broke from format a little bit and went into 3 different people.
Yeah, this one I could have done without this episode, maybe.
I'm kind of with you there. I think it was definitely the weakest episode.
It was interesting.
Yeah, it was fine.
But again, yeah, it interrupted the flow, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't that much to say. It was, Quinn Hughes, he's young. He is a new captain. He's learning about leadership. He's very quiet. It was like every segment was the same thing about him.
Yeah. I'm happy I got to meet him. Because I do think he's interesting. He gives off those like moody kid vibes.
Yes, he's very I don't know, like, no, he gives off very like mysterious, moody older brother from like a 90s teen drama.
Yeah. And I was hoping that he would be funnier, because I know he is funny, but
yes.
I don't think that came across very well. It seemed like he was maybe a little buttoned up for it, whereas like other people in the show were kind of like wide open.
Yes.
But I did appreciate seeing him on the ice, and when he kind of takes command of like what they're going to do, and it's, you go over here, I'm up there. Like, he did give off those vibes of knowing what he's doing. And the fact that he watches hockey basically 24/7 and is just completely obsessed with the sport, I that makes sense for captain vibes. I think like he knows what's going on, but
it checks out. I did think it was really cute how Rick Tocchet is like, yeah, no, he has come to me and been like, okay, but when should I, like, when you leave the room, like, when should I be like, hey guys, this isn't acceptable? And
right.
I was like, no, you just kind of have to figure that out on your own. Like, he's just kind of like, okay, but when do I do boss stuff? And
right.
I just thought that was really adorable.
Yeah.
Cause that's, I don't know, man. Like when I managed a bookstore when I was in my 20s, I was pretty much the same way. I was very fake it till you make it.
Yep.
And that's definitely how I would have been as an NHL captain too. Just like, okay, can I yell at them? Is this when I yell at them? Okay. All right. I just want to make sure it's cool. All right. Sweet.
Yep. Yeah, and I thought it was nice getting to know the Canucks, because I did become interested in them as a team last year, mostly because I think they have one of the better logos and branding.
Yes.
And they also have pretty good social media, so we watched some of their content last year. So knowing what he brought to the city and how everyone is super appreciative of them getting knocked out fairly early, I guess, but still, like...
Yeah, well, they made it to the second round.
I guess that's okay.
That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So.
Yeah, no, they've really struggled for a lot of years, so they made huge strides this year, and that was great.
Yeah.
Jacob Trouba, everybody kind of knows him from hitting people.
Yeah.
It was nice. We got to see his artistic side, which I've
told me about,
known about and told you about, but I don't think everybody knew about it. So that was kind of fun. And he did say something sort of surprisingly profound at one point. I think I wrote it down. Oh, yeah. He said, eventually there's not going to be a next year.
Right.
Which I thought was, kind of surprisingly profound. Because, yeah, that's the thing. They always say, oh, well, there's next year. There's next year if you don't win. And he's like, yeah, people run out of next years. Like,
yeah.
There's only so many times you can say that.
Right.
I'm not saying it's like the deepest thing ever, but like...
No, it's just something that you... lose track of. You're like, oh, well, it's okay, you'll get them next year. But yeah, some people won't. Yeah,
exactly. Some people won't. And it's shifting in hockey too, because it's not like, okay, well, you're on this one team and then every year the team just gets stronger and stronger until you win a cup. Like, things are always changing. Things are always in flux. It's like very, very different. You know, he's on the Rangers, and he has said this season that it's pretty much the last season for this core, just because of contracts ending and salary cap and all of that. And he's likely not going to be on the Rangers after this season. So, you know, then you're starting to go from scratch somewhere else, and it's a very different situation. So
yeah. And I don't know much of anything about him. I don't know that I learned much more. I don't know that there's a lot to learn, maybe. Seems nice.
He's old school.
Yeah.
He likes physicality.
Right.
He's got a baby.
He seems pretty grounded in in who he is and what his job is.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And
he doesn't have any like qualms about who he is.
Right. Yeah. And this was another part where again his wife was like, "Ooh, the injuries."
And I believe his wife is a doctor. I think she's doing her residency, which is part of why they're in New York.
Oh,
so
nice.
I wish they would have gotten a little more into that.
That would have added a little dimension.
I think so.
It felt a little dimensionless.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe that was just a byproduct of there being 3 stories in there.
Yep.
Because you also had Gabe Landeskog, which it's interesting for you because you've really only been watching hockey with me for 2 years. So you have heard the name, but you really didn't know anything about him.
Yeah. Had no. I know you've told me about him. And then as the story evolved, I was like, oh, yeah, you've definitely mentioned that this is a thing going on, but it was not anywhere in my mind.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting that like all 3 of the leaders, they're all at like different points in their sort of leadership. You know, you've got the very young leader, you have the sort of like established leader, you know, and then you have like the leader who is leading, but from kind of the sidelines almost. Right. So you had them at all very sort of different phases in their careers. And that was interesting. But again, it didn't feel necessarily that it moved the story along that much.
Yeah, correct. It was a kind of standalone, right? We got to see Trouba get knocked out, did we? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
No. We got to see Colorado get knocked out and him up in the box walk off and be like, all right, well, I'm not coming back this year.
Right. Yeah. We saw Colorado got knocked out, which at the hands of Dallas.
Correct.
Actually, technically, I'm in this documentary. I would like to say I've made my silver screen debut. I was at Game 6 of the Stars versus the Avalanche in round 2 this year. I was sitting right behind the goal when Matt Duchene scored the winner in double overtime. And I don't know if you can actually see me in the documentary, but
I feel like it was at like a sharper angle than the video or the national feed.
Probably, but there are definitely video angles out there where you can see me. And I just think since, they showed footage of the whole like audience, I'm technically in this documentary. So really you're getting an inside look right now.
Yeah.
Of behind the scenes of the behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Of the documentary, which I totally knew they were filming.
Yep. But yeah, I could have done without this episode.
Yeah,
but it was fine. It was fine.
The only thing you really got, I think, was that we saw the Preds got knocked out last episode, so then you saw it from kind of the perspective of the Canucks who knocked the Preds out, and then you did get to see sort of the Rangers moving along because then you do see the Rangers against the Panthers later on.
Right.
But yeah, it felt a little detached.
Yep.
But it did serve as a transition for our final 2 episodes, which I think we can treat as one big episode.
Yeah, it was essentially
the Cup or Bust parts 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we really get into the playoffs of it all, especially the finals. So that's where we really get to go behind the scenes with the Edmonton Oilers and then returning to the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to me that the first half hour of the first episode was really just the Oilers and mostly Connor McDavid, because that was the first time I think all documentary you had followed just one person, one team that closely. Everything else was back and forth a lot.
Right.
But the Oilers hadn't made much of an appearance before that, except for, when they knocked the Canucks out. It was just like, oh, you don't want to go against that team. And then that was it.
Right.
Yeah. This is where you really start to get to know Connor McDavid. star of the NHL, arguably the best hockey player of all time. Uh, you know, as somebody who maybe isn't like as steeped in the Connor McDavid lore, did you sort of have any takeaways from it?
I think my takeaways were about the same as watching his AD on YouTube.
That's the Architectural Digest.
Yeah, the house tour.
House tour.
Because when they cut there, and I was like, yeah, that's his house. That's like I already knew the environment, and I knew the coldness and the starkness and the and the fact that training is what he does. Like he's got the whole facility at his house. So yeah, no, I mean, I was thinking I would probably come away with this with a deeper understanding of him and like more of a respect, or like just like, oh yeah, he's a complicated, interesting guy, and he's got a lot more going on. And I don't think he is. I think he's just hockey. That quote where he said, people say I'm like a robot, and that's tough, that hurts, and I'm just like, but you are like a robot, like, and it's fine. Nothing against the guy, but yeah, I think he's just who he is, and that's great.
I don't know that he really had the choice. I mean, Leon Draisaitl talked about how Connor's had the media, following him since he was 12 years old. We have a 12-year-old, like,
she's not media ready.
She's not media ready at all. And like, if the media started following her now and she stayed this way, like as a result, in 28 years, she wouldn't be a hockey robot, but she'd be some kind of a robot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, since he's 12, this is his destiny.
Yeah.
Like
and really even before that, when he was like 8, I mean, his dad said that, when he was 4, they were talking about one day he'd win the Stanley Cup.
Yep.
Like, I don't think it can be overstated how much pressure that is on a certain kind of person. Like, not everyone's that way. One of the Florida Panthers players this year, I think it was Bennett, he was like, oh, when I was a kid, my dad and I said, let's eat Captain Crunch out of the Stanley Cup when I win. And then I won the Stanley Cup and we ate Captain Crunch out of it. That's like a fun story. That's like a lighthearted way to do it.
Right.
And like, maybe it's just because he won the cup. Maybe that's why it's fun and funny. But like with Connor McDavid, it's just like, he's hockey Sisyphus. Mm-hmm. Like instead of rolling a boulder up a hill, he's just like rolling a boulder towards the Stanley Cup, but it just keeps moving farther away.
Yeah. No, and I think that's tough. Like when he signed off or whatever in like the final episode, saying it was basically to the effect that, no, I'm going to win this eventually. And if I don't, like, that's not an option, or it had that kind of vibe. And it's like, man, what if you don't though? Like, are you going to be okay? And I don't think he is.
No, it made me feel very sad for him.
Yeah.
Like it was a lot, the most emotion you ever see from him is, when they lose, and he really just breaks down crying. And like, kudos to him for, being okay with that footage being out there. Because from what I do understand, they did have a certain amount of input into the amount of footage that was shown. And, they showed him sort of having a meltdown and swearing at the team midway through the series against the Panthers. And then, they showed him really melting down after losing the cup. And like, God, just the fact that they approached him and even asked him to come on the ice to accept the Conn Smythe trophy after just losing the Stanley Cup. I'm just like, dudes, like, read the fucking room. Like, my God. I mean,
yeah,
it's just not cool.
Yeah. I will say second least favorite room in the show.
Same.
Edmonton, weird vibes.
It just always felt so like dour, like just real low energy, but like undercurrents of bad vibes. But I don't, the vibes are not great. Like they just, I'm like not really this person, but I'm like, get some sage in there. Like,
no, they need, I don't know. Yeah. They're a little intense for me, but like not in a fun way.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking, because I had heard from you and online that, he breaks down and loses his shit, basically. So I was like, oh, maybe that'll be a real humanizing moment for him. And I don't think it was. Like, I was just like, oh, man, good luck, guy. Like you got a lot going on. You should deal with that. And
It's just telling to me that like really the only emotion you see from him is in relation to hockey. It's
Right.
breaking down, and you see like Leon puts his hand on his leg, and then you see Ryan Nugent Hopkins rubbing his back, and like that's the only really like any kind of physical demonstrativeness you see is like from his teammates who he's been with for like years and years and years.
Yep.
Like those two specifically, who he's been with forever.
Yeah. I did find it interesting, the amount of Draisaitl content we got. And I know that you were delighted by that.
I was.
But when they introduced Connor, right, they did the whole like backstory and showed him scoring ridiculous goals as he does. But they also did a whole like intro for Draisaitl and how awesome he is, which I was like, oh, interesting. It's not just the Connor McDavid show, even though it ended up being kind of that. But you definitely got a sense of Draisaitl and his relationship to it to some degree.
I think they have one of the most interesting relationships in hockey. I love Leon. I love his bitchiness in the press. I love his, he's very like got that sort of like very dry humor. He's definitely got the best facial hair in the NHL, hands down.
Mm-hmm.
That is a well-groomed beard. So good for him. Yeah, no, I think on any other team, he'd be the best player. And the fact that he happened to land in Edmonton with Connor, who's like pretty much and arguably the best player in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a lot of other players could have handled that. And I don't know, there's something about him. I just really admire that he's just like, hey, I'm really fucking awesome. Some nights I think I'm the best on the team. Most of the nights, obviously, it's Connor. Yep. And like, he's just very, I don't know, able to roll with that. Like, he clearly really admires Connor as a player, but like more so as a person and a friend.
Yep.
And like obviously he signed that big extension. I don't get the sense that, he would do that if he didn't think Connor was staying around too. Like that they really seem like it's like our cats. They're like a bonded pair. Like,
yeah, exactly.
They seem, I don't want to say like codependent because I don't think it's like that necessarily, but I don't know. They just go together.
Certainly.
Yeah. So no, I did really like that. And it is really funny though, like when all of the like lighthearted content you're getting out of Edmonton is like Leon Draisaitl, where he's like who you're cutting to when you need like a little smile or like a little lighthearted moment. And it's like, oh yeah, cut to that bitchy German. Like,
right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's kind of great.
And yeah, they followed Hyman a little bit too, but I figured he would be bland, and I thought he was a little bland. I did like the fact that he's like, hockey isn't what defines me as a person, which a lot of the people are like, no, I am hockey.
Yes.
And their whole family was like, he's hockey, and that's what we do. Hyman seemed to be like a little bit more normal.
Well, Hyman also like went to college and graduated, and he like writes children's books.
Nice.
And
yeah,
has like, I think has been on like bestseller lists with them. Like he has a whole other life. Like
good for him. I feel like that's where happiness lies if you're playing hockey in a Canadian market.
100%. Yep. Yeah. And Hyman used to be on the Leafs.
Oh, wow.
So like, I think going to Edmonton is just like a real vacation for him. He's like, oh, I get to be on Connor McDavid's line, and he just feeds me fucking sweet ass passes all the time. Like, when he scored, like they would show him and like he scored, and, Connor goes over and he's like, good job. He's like, hey, nice pass, man. Like, yeah. He's like, yeah, he knows what side his bread is buttered on. Yep. Like, he's just like, this was the best decision I ever made. Like, I just get to show up and hit pucks into the net, and it's pretty sweet.
Yep.
So. And then you have on the totally other side, after you have all of the sort of like grimness of Edmonton, you have the Florida Panthers, and you have Matthew Tkachuk lounging in his pool saying that he's weirdly too relaxed.
Yes, that was a funny little scene there.
Yeah.
It got a little introspective and philosophical for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. That's about all you're going to get from Matthew Tkachuk, like a brief moment of introspection. And then it's just back to being charming. I liked how people were saying he never met a camera he didn't like.
Yeah.
I was commenting last night how, you would assume if you didn't know any better that Matthew is the captain of the Panthers and not Barkov, because they barely mentioned Barkov at all.
Yep.
But honestly, Barkov's probably thrilled. I don't get the sense he's like very into being on camera, and for Matthew to roll up and be like, yes, give me all of the attention and adulation. I will take it.
Yeah.
Probably delightful for him.
Yeah, definitely. And getting to see the room in Florida and getting to see Paul Maurice, like just Paul Maurice that we haven't necessarily seen, and some of the things he says, just absolutely delightful.
I have heard such good things about the room in Florida. I've been hearing it since last season. Like, you know, all the players last season, even after they lost, they were like, yeah, it sucks we didn't win, but like, God, we have like the best room, and it was still like the best season I ever played. And I mean, it really seems like it. Like, you could just see the energy, like, you know, in game 7, like Knobloch gave like the just saddest pep talk I've ever heard. It sounded so like,
oh yeah,
just really like depressing. And then like you go over to the Panthers room and the energy is just so different. And like,
yep.
And like, interestingly, like with Matthew, as much as he was sort of the face of the Panthers side, like he wasn't really talked about as the star. Like it wasn't about his production or his goals, because he wasn't like the leader in any of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was more last season with kind of dragging the team through the playoffs, but it was more about sort of the energy that he brought. But he was like a very team first guy, just like he was like a very family first guy. And so it was like this very juxtaposition of like, Connor is this like man by himself on an island,
right,
where people have put him, but more importantly, he has put himself, versus the Panthers, who are like a family and a team and an organization and a room. And Edmonton and Sunrise are like the two farthest teams away from each other, like geographically.
Yep.
And like the vibes could not be farther apart either.
Yeah. The storylines of last season were like written by a professional writer.
Oh yeah, no, the hockey script writers were working overtime last season. It was completely insane.
Yeah.
So.
And yeah, no, I think that Florida room, the vibe I got from it was, all right, imagine I'm a hockey player and I'm new and I show up to that Florida room. I am welcomed with open arms and everyone's excited I'm there. And in Edmonton, it's like, oh, who's the new guy? That's how I feel, you know, in my brain, how things would go.
Or if they even like notice the new guy.
They might not.
Because there's just such a like miasma of like misery and stuff. Like, it's like, do they even notice?
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
No. I feel like there might be hazing in Florida too, which I would not be excited about. But
I mean, probably, but like, hopefully more of the lighthearted variety.
I think it would be lighthearted, but I don't think I would enjoy it.
Oh no, for sure not. I mean, definitely alcohol poisoning would be involved at some point. It would not be ideal.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think Paul Maurice is a big part of that.
Paul Maurice getting down to demonstrate the goalie.
Yeah.
Position and like being like, you guys, I'm old. I can't believe you're making me get down on the floor. Like that was so relatable as a middle-aged lady.
Yeah. And I feel like throughout the season last year, he talked about that, how it's not him and it's a group of guys.
Yeah.
Like they're just all doing it together. And you could see that it wasn't even just the coaches and the team, but it was the support staff as well. When at the end, Tkachuk gave that puck to
the VP of player
engagement. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No. And that's really what it is. It's like, and that's what they say about Matthew Tkachuk too. It's like, he is friends with everybody, and it's not just the players. It's like the people who work there. It's like, you know, the people who cook the food and like the people who clean. Like he knows everybody in the building by name.
Yep.
And that's the kind of stuff that has made me sort of reluctantly come around. Like, as much as he's a pest on the ice, off the ice, he seems like a pretty decent guy.
Yeah, that seems to be the case for a lot of pests on the ice, as I'm starting to realize.
Yeah, I think it's awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, even Swayman in his episode was like, yeah, Kachuk's kind of a pest, but I kind of admire him at the same time.
Yeah.
Although he was like, I'm sure he doesn't want to hear it though. I was like, honestly, I don't think it's that he doesn't want to hear it. I think it's just that he doesn't think about you.
Right.
He just doesn't. He's like, Swayman who? Like,
yeah, no. He definitely seemed to have an analytical approach to dealing with goalies. Like, he figured out what kind of goalie Swayman is, and he's like, well, that's how you handle these kind of goalies.
Yes. Yep. No, I mean, that he's a professional button pusher, and he enjoys pushing buttons.
Yep.
He's like, yes, I found a job that I love, and it's pushing buttons. So, well, overall, I would say I really enjoyed the documentary. I'd give it, I don't know, a solid like 7.5 out of 10, maybe.
Yeah, I think I'm right there. 7. Yeah, as it progressed, we got less and less of real time stuff with them. Like as things were going on, it was more post facto talking head stuff. So I would have liked to see a little bit more of the behind the scenes while things are going on. But I also understand that probably they were like, things are going on, we're in our zone. Kind of like Forsberg's wife when she was like, oh, he's in playoff mode. We don't really, I just let him do his thing.
Yeah.
I let him be on his weird schedule.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
she's like, I had to wait to push out this baby until he was done eating his breakfast at 8:08 in the morning or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we lost a little of that, but it was still satisfying, still really good, worth the watch.
I mean, kudos to the Edmonton players, specifically McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman too, for coming back clearly after the fact to do all of the talking head interviews. What probably had to be pretty fresh after losing the cup.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of the interviews too. Like some of those Nylander ones were definitely after he lost, and he's just like, oh,
yeah, no, it's pretty rough. So, no, I feel like hockey players in general tend to be pretty closed off and media trained. This didn't crack things open in any kind of meaningful way, I don't think, but I do feel like it was maybe a little more in depth than hockey usually lets us see. I'd love to see a season 2. I'd love to see it focus on different teams, such as and including maybe the team that is the Dallas Stars, because they're a really fucking good team. And we're getting more interesting players. We're going to have a lot more physicality this year. Actually, this is a perfect time to transition into the next segment, which I'm calling stargazing. And yes, we're going to keep it quick.
All right.
I'm calling it stargazing. It's where we talk about my beloved Dallas Stars. Not a lot to talk about right now because it's still preseason. I am going to say I loved in the preseason. I have loved Leon Bichel.
You've talked about him incessantly.
Ad nauseum.
Yep.
He's great. He's a big boy.
Yep.
6'6", 230.
Yep.
He lays down hits. He is emotional, as I mentioned to you during I think it was it was like a juniors game last year, because I think he was still playing in Sweden last year. He was in the penalty box and something happened on the ice that he didn't like, and he just full on left the penalty box to handle shit on the ice and got suspended for 3 games.
Love that.
And I like that in a person.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Yeah. So no, he brings the heat. He sadly did get sent down to the Texas Stars AHL team just the other day. But honestly, it's a good thing for his development. He'll get a lot more minutes there. Give him another year to develop. I think he'll get the Stankoven treatment this year, maybe come out closer to the end of the season, get his 9 games, keep him preserved as a rookie for another year, maybe get some playoff time.
Yeah.
And I love that for him. And we're going to go see the Texas Stars in November when they come play the Colorado Eagles. So maybe we'll get to see him.
Perhaps.
Maybe I should get a Bichel jersey.
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should.
Get his autograph.
Ooh.
Get his hockey stick. I'll bring a sign that says, "Give me your hockey stick, Bichel."
Yes, that's very persuasive. Good job. All right. And then, we'll keep it at that for the Stars right now. And then our next segment that we usually have was going to be called "What Team is Fred Rooting For This Week?" Because up until very recently, you have not had a hockey team, but you surprised us all last week when you made a commitment to your hockey team that you really enjoy.
That's correct.
And that's why we call this next segment Flying Off the Handle, where we talk about the Philadelphia Flyers.
There we go.
What was it about the Philadelphia Flyers that made you want to commit?
So last season, Travis Konechny did a lot of post-game interviews wearing a all-black Flyers hat. And I thought it was the coolest hat, and you could not get it. You could not find it.
It was just like a black baseball cap with like the Flyers logo, but the Flyers logo was black.
Yes, absolutely. Could not get it. Could not find it. We were thinking, we were like, it must be a players-only hat or something. Anyway, 2 or 3 weeks ago, was on the NHL shop. That hat was on there for closeout. I bought that hat. Done deal. Now, I do like the Flyers. I do enjoy watching them play. They are your backup team, so that makes it easy for me to know things about them. But last season, I definitely watched more Tortorella interviews than I did Flyers games. Like, I can listen to that man talk about hockey forever.
It's true. He loves Tortorella. He's constantly watching pre and post game interviews.
Yep.
I got into the Flyers because I had several Flyers on my fantasy hockey team. If the Dallas Stars are my one true love, then the Flyers are my side piece. And you were kind of like, oh, geez, another hockey team we have to follow. But I'm really glad that you have gotten into the Flyers because I'll definitely be watching them when the Stars don't conflict. And I think they're a great team to be getting into right now, especially with the emergence of Matvei Michkov, the hockey phenom.
Yep.
And with Travis Konechny signing for more years with them.
Yep.
I think it's a very exciting time for them. And I think their rebuild is just going into an upswing.
And we got Draisaitl.
Drysdale.
Drysdale. Yeah, got to get those two mixed up. Drysdale with some weight on him.
Yes.
Maybe
put some muscle on him.
Maybe he won't fold in half.
Yes.
We got the big giant goalie guy who I think is fun.
Fedotov.
He might not be that good, whatever.
Well, he'll be backing up Urson, so.
Oh, he's going to be the backup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't see much of preseason, but I don't think people were too whelmed with his performances.
I don't think so either, but yeah. I mean, there's a lot going on. We'll see.
Yeah.
That's not even getting into the whole Kolosov stuff, who's the other goalie who didn't show up, but now is there. And then, of course, there's the Ryan Johansson contract termination stuff, which I know how much you love contract stuff.
I love the business of hockey.
It's his absolute favorite.
Yeah.
So we were going to play a game today, but Fred is giving me the look that shows that we're in danger of going into overtime. So we're just going to go ahead and call that a wrap on this week's episode of Ice is Slippery. You can find us on both Tumblr and Instagram at Ice is Slippery Pod. We don't actually have much in the way of content there yet, but we will, assuming I remember to post it. If, like Fred, you are afraid of social media, you can also email us at iceisslipperypod@gmail.com, where we would love to hear your spicy takes. Until next week, stay out of the penalty box. Or don't. It's way more fun in here.